Hey, this is Venus. It's January 2022. And you know what that means? It's the 2-year anniversary of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. And to celebrate this amazing milestone, I'm going to be giving away all sorts of prizes. And guess what? At the end of the month, there's going to be a random draw, and there'll be 2 prizes available. One is a date with me, Venus, and it'll be lots of fun, totally private, drinks, food, whatever, all of that stuff. The other is going to be a chance to help me get ready for a night with my bull. So help me pick out what I'm going to wear, hang out with me while I'm going to get ready, all of that fun stuff. So those are 2 amazing grand prize draws that are going to happen at the end of January to help celebrate the 2-year anniversary of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. You can learn more by going to patreon.com/Venus Cuckoldress. Coming up on this special Cuck Week episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast.
Stuff like that happens a lot. And I've had people from around the world write to me and say exactly that when they read the book, they didn't feel alone, that it reduced their shame, that they realized they weren't the only one that found this hot and exciting and desirable, and it helped them accept themselves, which, just as a therapist, that's my goal. As a writer, that just basically gives me a literary orgasm right there.
So the Insatiable Wives book, did that spark some conversation between you and your husband, your partner?
We had been talking, yes, in short, because it helped us to understand that sexuality is normal. Whatever it is for you, whatever it is for me, it is normal. And we need to be able to think about it in a fuller way.
It wasn't that they then embraced a non-monogamous marriage or became, went out and became super promiscuous or anything else, but instead just being able to open up about your sexual fantasies and desires with your partner and have your partner accept them, whether you act on them or not, is so healing. And I have lots of couples that the husband has a fantasy of cuckolding, but he's afraid of making it a reality. He really just wants it to stay a fantasy, but he wants to make his wife a part of it.
Like, if I desire to ride my dildo and you hold it with your chin and eat me out, and I tell you that it's another man behind me making me pregnant, that I'm taking his babies from him, are you okay with that? Can we do that? And if your husband is like, yes, let's talk. Yeah. Where is this coming from? Like, it opens the doors to just be more yourself. And you don't have to know all these answers right away. This book lets you figure out how to explore and think better.
Okay.
Without judging.
I think I and the audience need to just take a moment and sit with that image.
Right?
Because wow, holy shit, wow.
It's not really the answer I was expecting, but I love it.
Welcome to the Venus Cuckoldress podcast, a place to learn all things cuckolding for the curious, the passionate, and the sexually empowered woman who wants it all. Make sure you go to venuscuckoldress.com to subscribe to the podcast and check out the Venus blog. And of course, if you love it, share it. Now, sit back, make yourself comfortable, and enjoy the show with your host, Venus.
Welcome to this episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. I am your host, Venus. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. It is Cuck Week. And this episode is really, really special because I have some amazing guests joining me to talk about, well, one of my favorite books of all time about cuckolding called Insatiable Wives. So the author is Dr. David Ley. You're probably already aware of this book because it is the book on cuckolding. It was written in 2009, I think it was published, but oh my goodness, it is a fabulous book. And now it is on audiobook. So I have the lovely Rose Carraway also joining us to talk about what that was like to narrate this amazing book. And of course, in the show notes for today's episode is where you'll find the links to buy the book or the audiobook for Insatiable Wives. And you're probably wondering what Cuck Week is all about. So this is the first annual Cuck Week. It is January 25th to 31st of 2022. And it is going to be a week to celebrate the Insatiable Wives on audiobook, but also cuckolding in general. And so there's going to be a lot of events going on. If you want to get the full list, all you need to do is check out @CuckWeek on Twitter, and you'll be able to see all of the events that are happening. And there's a lot going on. It's amazing. There's blogs, podcasts, special events, Moan chats, like, oh my goodness, so much. It's just going to be amazing. Absolutely amazing. And of course, in addition to this episode, I am also going to be participating in some other Cuck Week events. I'm going to be joining Dan Savage on the Savage Lovecast for a special Cuck Week episode to talk about cuckolding and answer some cuckolding questions. So that'll be, oh my God, so much fun. I hope you check that out. I'm also going to be doing a very special chat on the Moan app. That's MON, the Moan app. If you want to look it up, also have the link in the show notes for that app. But it's a live drop-in audio app. And so it is a live event. You definitely want to catch that. You can just listen in, and it's going to be all about cuck love. So it's going to be an opportunity for the women in the cuckolding lifestyle to share their love for cuckolding and cucks. So it's going to be a very, very special event, and I hope that you join me. That's Friday the 28th at 7 p.m. Pacific time on the Moan app. Lastly, I will be doing a very special Pillow Talk event this month on the 29th of January, which is a Saturday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. I will have a very special Pillow Talk event with a panel of cucks to join me. And oh my God, it's going to be so much fun because this is the catch. The guys are going to be answering questions from the women only. So yes, we will try to go easy on them. It's going to be a lot of fun. Normally, the Pillow Talk events are open only to Patreon supporters of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. But for this special Cuck Week event for Pillow Talk, this one is open to everyone. So it's free to register. If you want to register for the event, all you have to do is go to venuscuckoldress.com and click on the tab that says Pillow Talk. Super simple. You'll absolutely want to check out that live because it's a live event and it's tons of fun. All right, now, before we dive into my conversation with Dr. David Ley and Rose Carraway, I am just going to pause for a quick little message from one of my new favorite apps. Here it is.
Hetero, the hookup app for oral pleasure. With Hetero, the pleasure is all yours. Hetero is the only hookup app designed specifically for oral pleasure. An inclusive space for people of all sexualities and gender identities. Grounded in safety, sex positivity, and enthusiastic consent. Hetero lets you connect based on a wide range of kinks and relationship dynamics, including cuckolding. Download the Hetero app, HEADERO, on iOS or Android, or check out our website at www.hetero.com. Hetero, going down in a town near you. Today, are you ready? Download the Hetero app now.
All right, Joining me today, I have two amazing guests to talk about my favorite book ever. And, well, I don't know about ever, but it's definitely one of my top favorites. I have Dr. David Ley and Rose Carraway who are joining me for today's podcast episode. So Dr. David Ley has actually been on the podcast before. He was on as a guest last year. And it talked about the cuck shame spiral. And let me just say, I got such a response from that episode. But he is a clinical psychologist, sex therapist, and author located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's the author of several books and research studies on sexuality, including his first book, Insatiable Wives, Women Who Stray and the Men Who Love Them, which was the first book to examine the cuckolding and hot wife phenomenon. With Justin Lay Miller and Dan Savage, he published the first psychological study of the cuckold fantasy. Dr. Ley is a frequent guest in the media and around the world with appearances in the New York Times, CNN, and Time magazine, as well as Hustler and Playboy magazines. Thank you so much for joining me today, David.
Thanks for having me. I mean, that was a lovely conversation we had before about shame.
All right, joining me for today's episode, I'm so excited about this. I have two really amazing guests to talk about one of my favorite books of all time, Insatiable Wives. I have Dr. David Ley and Rose Carraway. So Dr. David Ley actually was on the podcast last year to talk about the cuck shame spiral, and I had so much feedback, amazing feedback from that episode. So it really resonated with a lot of people. But he's here to talk about his new audiobook, Insatiable Wives. So he's a clinical psychologist, sex therapist, and author located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He's the author of several books and research studies on sexuality, including his first book, Insatiable Wives, Women Who Stray and the Men Who Love Them, which was the first book to examine the cuckolding and hot wife phenomenon. With Justin Lay Miller and Dan Savage, he published the first psychological study of the cuckold fantasy. Dr. Ley is a frequent guest in the media and around the world with appearances in the New York Times, CNN, and Time magazine, as well as Hustler and Playboy magazines. Thank you so much for joining me today, David.
Thanks for having me. I mean, that chat we had last time about shame, I thought that was really productive, and it was fun to get into some of that, kind of meatier discussion with the goal of helping listeners. I thought it was really cool that you were willing to go there.
Oh, yeah, definitely one of my favorite episodes. And I also have Rose Carraway, who's here with us today to talk about what it was like to record the audiobook. Rose is a native North California writer, editor, audiobook narrator, publisher, and podcaster for the #1 erotica show in iTunes, which is the Kiss Me Quick's erotica podcast. She freely celebrates and cultivates eroticism with her lurid listeners of the Kiss Me Quick podcast. Rose's writings prominently show her commitment to both feminism and masculinism. She believes that people of all genders and orientations should be considered complementary and interdependent and are necessary for a genuinely healthy and functional society. I agree with you, Rose. Rose's other passions revolve around her soulmate and co-host, Big Daddy Dave Carraway. She also is studying to earn her Master Beekeeper certification. There you go. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Rose.
Hi, thank you for having me. I forgot I had the beekeeper thing in there. That's awesome.
I mean, shouldn't it be mistress or queen? I mean, come on.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to talk about this today because, like I said, Insatiable Wives, one of my all-time favorite books, is now on audiobook. And when I heard that, I was like so excited. I haven't really listened to many books on audiobook, but when I did, I was like, this is so convenient. This is wonderful. For all the people who struggle to have time to sit down and read an actual book, it was great because I could kind of multitask at the same time. Loved it. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the book. We're going to talk to Rose about what it was like to record. And we're also going to talk a little bit about what kind of trends are happening in cuckolding, because it's been a little while since that book was published. So I think it was, what was it, 2011 that it was published?
2009, actually, that came out.
2009.
2009. So yeah, what is that? 12 years ago. Wild.
That's amazing. And so so David, I really want to ask you some questions about the book that I didn't get a chance to ask you last time you were on the show. First of all, it's a really great resource for anyone who wants to learn anything about cuckolding or hot wifing. And it's so detailed, and it's written for anyone who is curious or experienced or anywhere in between. And so that's why I think that like it's become such I want to say iconic book for cuckolding.
Wow, that makes me feel, nervous and humble, but that's awesome.
But it really has. And so I feel like you did such a wonderful job of exploring non-monogamy, but also the wild history of female sexuality. And the way that you interviewed couples and the way that you put it all together was it's such a nice read. It really is. It's fascinating. I was highlighting all over the place when I was first reading that book. So what was it? Well, first of all, why cuckolding? Why did you choose cuckolding? But what was it that you were hoping to achieve by writing that book?
I'd been working with alternative sexuality issues for a while, as a clinician, and collecting some data for a little study on non-monogamy that I never actually published. It was a crappy little study, but I encountered these couples that lived the cuckold and hot wife lifestyle, and being perfectly honest, my initial impression and response was, that's fucking crazy. That can't be healthy. And the amazing thing was that these first couples that I encountered were remarkably healthy. They had, incredible communication skills, successful families, successful careers, healthy relationships by every measure we would throw out there. And it forced me to realize that I was making a knee-jerk kind of biased assumption and reaction based on social stigma, based on bias, and that I had allowed those things to intrude into my clinical thinking without me really noticing. As a clinician, I'm a good scholar. I went to the literature, and there was nothing published about these kind of lifestyles and approaches to relationship. And so, I started investigating it to try and fill that gap in me, because it really, as a clinician that tries to be ethical and non-judgmental, I was surprised by how easily that bias popped up in me. And so I ended up writing the book, and that was really my goal of the book, was to say, basically, to my field, to society in general, hey, look how easy it is to judge based upon moral ideas around female sexuality and promiscuity and monogamy, when the reality is much, much more complex. And that actually, it triggered, in a lot of ways, what has been my passion for the past 12 years, which is challenging the degree to which sexual morality has intruded into clinical practice. Because there's a lot of clinicians that do the same thing I do. I did then, out of ignorance. And in a lot of ways, I'm just really, really lucky and thankful that I had that experience, because it's made me a better clinician. And now I get to share all of that with other people, including your listeners.
So tell me, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the cover and the title. So how did you and why did you choose the title, Insatiable Wives? And the reason why I'm asking is because clearly it's focusing on the wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. Gosh. I think that title, it came from some piece that I was reading during the research around it, where I think the wife and the husband, identified that, her sexuality was just insatiable, and that he struggled to keep up with it. And I thought, man, that's such a great kind of, frame. And I didn't know it until we published it, that there was like a 1980s movie or something about female infidelity, kind of such, that with the title Insatiable Wives. So sometimes that'll cross fertilize with my book. But it really was about, kind of sort of, as you said. Now, it's funny, I maybe hadn't even realized this until you said that, Venus, that it was about focusing this on the wife. That, so much of this, it's interesting because so much of this lifestyle gets started oftentimes by the male, although I'm hearing about more and more women who are going to their partners and saying, hey, this is something I want to try. But historically, this has largely come from the man, or introduced by the man, and is sometimes kind of driven by the man. But that was the fascinating thing, was that when women engaged with this, they took it over. And it became focused on the female sexuality, and the guys are just along for the ride.
That's exactly it. They're like, wait, she took it and ran with it.
Yeah. So, so I mean, I love you pointing that out, Venus. I don't think anybody ever has, but even the title makes it about the wife. That's awesome.
And how did you decide on the artwork for the cover?
So the artwork it's a painting from the 1800s called Candleliz Shows His Wife to Gyges, and it's a depiction of this story that I tell in the book from Greek history of Candleliz, who was this king, had a beautiful wife. He wanted to show her off. He had Gyges, his advisor, hide in a closet while his wife got undressed. The wife finds out and conspires with Gyges to kill Candleliz for the shame of what happened. And then the wife marries Gyges, and Gyges takes over as king. And the story was told as kind of a moral, parable of, look, dude, this is why you don't show off your wife, because you'll get killed and deposed and all these other bad things will happen. And then in the late 1800s, candlelism was a name that was termed for the fetish of guys who like to show off their wife or girlfriend. And we have lots of that today with, all of the guys who have naked pictures of their wife or girlfriend on their cell phone that they show off to their buddies, right? And so that story was really kind of central to the book. And I ran across that painting and reached out to the publishers, and I said, is there any possibility we could use this? And they investigated, and sure enough, it was out of the painting was, out of copyright, so we could use it with, open rights and stuff like that. So there was a lot that made it work. But the thing that I love about it is that, it is this woman with a curvy body. She's got this curvy, natural body. And I hope it's not TMI, but I will share that I like women with curves. So that's kind of my thing. And so I got to have this book with a curvy woman on the cover. And I will just say, one of the most exciting things that's happening right now is that as the audiobook is coming out and people are getting attention, and Rose and Dave were able to use the same picture, the same painting on the cover of the audiobook, women are now posting pictures of themselves basically doing cosplay, reproducing the cover of the book, which just makes me squee. I mean, oh my God. I'm just still tickled about it.
You got like a fucking fan club out there. You know that, right?
It makes me look over my shoulder and wonder who you're talking to. But 13-year-old me is like out of his mind with happiness.
That's awesome. Okay. You wrote this amazing book on the cuckolding phenomenon, the history, all that sort of stuff, female sexuality, called Insatiable Wives. And it is quite a taboo topic. continues to be very taboo today. Did you receive any kind of response from, I guess, the psychology world or just the general public or anything like that? What was the response after the book, if there was any?
When I wrote the book, there was really only one research article that had ever been published about the topic. It was a guy in Israel who had done an analysis of penthouse letters about wife sharing, and so when I wrote the book, really the psychology, mental health, counseling industry was basically oblivious to all of this. But since then, actually, cuckolding has gotten, I would say, more attention, certainly in the mainstream. I mean, it's exploded. But from the kind of traditional academic kind of industry, it's getting more attention. There's more research happening around it. And the thing that really kind of stands out to me, though, was at one point, a former president, I won't name who it was, a former president of the American Psychological Association reached out to me on the side and said, David, I'm so glad you wrote this book because cuckolding is and always has been my thing. And I couldn't ever say it. And I can't imagine that a psychologist was ever going to write this book. And I'm so thankful that you did.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So stuff like that happens a lot. And I've had people from around the world write to me and say exactly that when they read the book, they didn't feel alone, that it reduced their shame, that they realized they weren't the only one that found this hot and exciting and desirable, and it helped them accept themselves. Which, just as a therapist, that's my goal. As a writer, I mean, that just basically gives me a literary orgasm right there.
That's awesome. Oh my goodness, I love that. Okay, the last question before I move on to Rose. There's something I have noticed about your book that I think is really quite unique, is that women and couples tend to take a photo of your book in all sorts of places and send it to you or publish it online. What's with that?
I don't know, but don't make it stop. Whatever you do, it is exciting. It's cool. I love how they are, making my book a part of their life and then sharing it with me and the world. The fact that a lot of these people like yourself are amazingly beautiful, and I get to get the vicarious pleasure of my book being with these beautiful people. I guess that's it. I mean, if I want to be serious for a minute, it is that people are taking my book and making it a part of their life, which is just really cool.
To have people contact you and tell you that, they're so grateful that you wrote the book, that it has helped them and changed their life. I know what that's like. I get people who say that about my podcast, and it is like a feeling of true success. It really is. So I get that. Okay. Welcome, Rose. I can't wait to ask you a little bit about, what this was like to make an audiobook for Insatiable Wives. First of all, I want to know about the process of it because I have no idea, but it's something I would love to learn about. And the other thing I want to know about is what were your thoughts on cuckolding before that? And then did you learn anything? And are you curious to try it now?
Let me just say before Rose jumps in that my publisher, I had reached out to them several times and said, hey, people are asking for this book in audio. Can we do that? And my publisher didn't think there was an audience, didn't think there was a market for it. And, and my publisher are lovely people, but they just didn't think it was the right kind of strategy. And then Rose and Dave had become friends of mine, and they suggested to me that they thought there was a market for the book. And they walked me through the process of getting audio rights to the book so that we could do an audio version of it, walked me through the process of all of the bidding and everything else. But I want to be clear that this audiobook happened because of Rose and Dave. And there is nobody in the world that I was willing to let read this book other than Rose. I mean, having listened to her podcast, having listened to her reading erotica, I will say I got an erection listening to her read the introduction to my book. I mean, and it wasn't like I was turned on. It was just like my brain was like, what the hell is going on? This is amazing. So, take it away, Rose. I mean, because she and her production, folks have done an incredible thing.
Oh my gosh. My nibblies get hard every time I hear that. Thank you. I'm very honored to have gotten to put voice to this book. I've read it a few times now, and both my husband and I were wondering, like, why hasn't this been scooped up yet? This is an invaluable book. It really is. It is. I think I've seen someone describe it. It is like a sort of Bible for cuckolding, and immense historical references are available in here too. And I just, the sexy librarian in me cannot go further without mentioning the bibliography in here. I have since the first time I read it, and then after I narrated it, have added to my to be read book list, because you cannot read this one without wanting to read more things, more fiction and more nonfiction. I think that both can be very valuable. We really focus on fiction at our Kiss Me Quicks podcast, but we also like to give our audience medicine. And this one was big medicine. Mm-hmm. We can relate to this subject matter very personally. My husband had no words for what he had been feeling. And I was like, I don't even know. And when we first started our podcast, it was the very first story request that we got from a listener was, can you write cuckolding erotica? And we were like, what is that? We have no idea. And the gentleman asked first, which was really very special, because, you worry that guys are just going to take advantage and send dick pics and send inappropriate whatever, just so that they could get off. But this gentleman was very nice and respectful and asked if he could send us videos of what cuckolding was. And part of me was like, okay, I don't know what I'm in for, but sure, I need to know what this is. As an eroticist, I want to know. And so, that if one person reaches out to you for a specific thing, there's 100 more. And so that's important to me to try to fulfill. So we watched the videos and we're taken aback, like that we both have something with this. We don't know and now we have this word for it. It's cuckolding. And it used to be this negative thing, this terrible, awful thing that would like ruin the sanctity of marriage and potentially your castle or whatever, everything could come crashing down if cuckolding was a part of your life. But I think Dr. Lay said, the people who are in this lifestyle have turned it on its head and have made it an intensely positive thing that I don't know if there's any other expression that can hold female sexuality as high as this one does. It gives me goosebumps because I had no autonomy as a kid. I didn't know what my sexuality was. It had been taken from me. And so I internalized everything and I had no words, but not meeting, but seeing David Lay on Twitter, I was like, that guy's kind of amazing. And what he's talking about is really ringing true to me and my husband. And I picked up his book and was just, okay, I need to follow this guy. And plus he does jujitsu and I'm on my ass in love with everything. Like everything I've seen him do is just like, I really would love to go and meet Dr. Lay in person one day just to shake his hand and say, good freaking work. You're helping a lot of people put words to things that they're feeling. And that's what our show was supposed to do, was inspire couples to dive into what eroticism was, but the medicine here was important to add to that. And so getting to put this book in front of me and me be behind the microphone, like I got in touch with my inner David Attenborough with Birds and Horns. The very first damn chapter was just like, I'm in a nature program talking about cuckoo birds. And then, now I'm going into like, I think it was Laurence Olivier who narrated like this World War II series. And I'm like channeling that going, okay, this is the best documentary audiobook I think on the market right now. That's just my opinion.
You did an amazing job. I love listening to your voice. You have like the perfect voice for it.
Doesn't she? I mean, again, I seriously, I mean, nobody could read the book other than her. I mean, wow. Just, yeah.
And if you're going to listen to 12 hours of one person talking, I mean, there's very few people who can pull that off. Like, you did an amazing
job. When you have this book, it mixes in modern day like medicine. Like, okay, here's what's going on today, and you dive into mental health really, really well, which I think was very important because a lot of us have these preconceived notions that, oh, these people in this lifestyle are broken and mentally unsound. And it's so ridiculous that we jump to that kind of a conclusion because you just don't understand. You haven't, number one, maybe asked the questions or even thought about it or knew what it was, but you've also mixed in this book history, which is fascinating. And then the interludes where you interviewed actual couples. That was very important. And I think that narrating erotica really helped me put voice to a lot of those people that you spoke to. That was one of the highlights. There were many, but that was definitely one of the highlights. It was fun to put voice to those people so that they could be heard to a greater audience than being read,
So the Insatiable Wives book, did that spark some conversation between you and your husband, your partner?
We had been talking, yes, in short, because it helped us to understand that sexuality is normal. Whatever it is for you, whatever it is for me, it is normal. And we need to be able to think about it in a fuller way. And the first way to do that is you have to accept it about yourself. Fear and shame are so heavy within us. And it's hard to shake tradition off. It's hard to shake what your parents said and what religion has dictated and what science thought it knew. It's hard to shake those things, that foundation. But this book takes some horse blinders off. It allows you to see a little clearer. It allows you to ask yourself questions, and say, okay, like if I desire to ride my dildo and you hold it with your chin and eat me out, and I tell you that it's another man behind me making me pregnant, that I'm taking his babies from him, are you okay with that? Can we do that? And if your husband is like, yes, let's talk. Yeah. Where is this coming from? Like, it opens the doors to just be more yourself. And you don't have to know all these answers right away. This book lets you figure out how to explore and think better.
Okay.
Without, judging.
I think I and the audience need to just take a moment and sit with that image.
Right?
Because wow, holy shit, wow.
It's not really the answer I was expecting, but I love it.
Yes, the short answer is yes. The easy answer is yes, but well, again, it opens the door to think more fully into your fantasies. Like, you have no idea how boundless your fantasies are until you read a book like this. You really don't. The taboos that say, no, 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 you don't get to do this. I am not thought police. I do not want to control how people fantasize, what they want to do with their body, individually, let alone with their partner in the privacy of their own bedroom. But then, the world of cuckoldry, the people who actually live this lifestyle are acting on these things. And I couldn't be more prouder. Like, I feel like the cuckold world is like this missing family that I didn't know I didn't have. And so I'm really excited to get to know a lot more people, smart people who've been there, done that, and can help guide others along the way, and just make you feel good about being who the hell you are, who you want to be.
I'll jump in there and just say that, as Rose was I think highlighting pretty well there, that accepting your sexual desires, your unique, sexual expression, your naughty fantasies that you've been afraid of or ashamed of, been frightened to share with your partner, doesn't mean that you have to necessarily go out and act on them. I've talked to a lot of people who read my book or read any of my books, and it wasn't that they then embraced a non-monogamous marriage or became, went out and became, super promiscuous or anything else, but instead just being able to open up about your sexual fantasies and desires with your partner and have your partner accept them, whether you act on them or not, is so healing. And I have lots of couples that, the husband has a fantasy of cuckolding, but he's afraid of making it a reality. He really just wants it to stay a fantasy, but he wants to make his wife a part of it. And so then he and his wife, and then gay couples now are doing cuckolding too, which is awesome. They start exploring it together in fantasy. They start exploring it together in role play. They start writing stories about it. Maybe, they do the game where they go to the bar and the wife, gets picked up by guys, and then the husband swoops in and seduces her. Yeah. And again, all of that happens with trust, acceptance, and communication about these things. And, if couples can do what Rose just described, which is, read the book and then look at their partner and go, wow, what do you think? That is a goal right there. That's a success right there. One of the neat things since the audiobook came out is now people are sending Rose and I pictures of them on a road trip listening to the book, which is just awesome, because then I think about, these couples on a road trip listening to the book. And I'm also thinking, wow, did they get turned on enough that they pulled off at a rest stop? Because I'm hoping so.
They did. They did. The next step is tattoos, right? People are going to start getting tattoos. I mean, Elvira could do it. We could do it, right, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, David, it's been several years now since you wrote the book, and a lot has happened between then and now. What are your observations from your vantage point on how things have changed within cuckolding? You mentioned one thing about it used to be more initiated by men, and now you're seeing some women are the ones to initiate.
Definitely. I mean, first, cuckolding was just, it was not in the mainstream. It wasn't discussed. It was the dirty shame. It was the secret. And that was why I included the history section of the book, was to say, you know what, people, this has really always been here. We just pretended it wasn't. It's always been something that a lot of couples were doing secretly. And what's changing now is that they're just coming out of the closet about it. And that's the number one thing, is that, it has entered the mainstream dialogue. I mean, I laugh just because the cuckolding comes up in so many movies and TV shows now. There was this one TV show, iZombie, I think, where a couple, the husband kills a guy, and then it turns out that guy was having an affair with the wife. Well, the wife doesn't want the husband to go to jail, so they pretend that it was a cuckold relationship, to try to help the husband avoid getting prosecuted. And I mean, it's just like this theme is coming up everywhere. And then you've got, Republicans and far right conservatives calling each other cuck. And then, for the love of God, you've got Jerry Falwell, Jerry Falwell Jr., getting exposed as liking to watch his wife, have sex with the pool boy, for God's sake, the pool boy. And it was like, wow. I mean, holy crap. This is just out there. And it's, I get kind of giddy here, because it's like, wait a minute. A, this isn't my fault. I didn't do this. But B, wow. How did I catch the wave at the front end of this is really very cool. So that's the biggest change, is that, people are talking about this in a way that never have before. Cuckold porn is now consistently some of the most popular porn in the world on every website. And the neat thing, though, that I'm seeing in social media now is that the women are driving this conversation. That's the holy crap. That's just some of the cool stuff. And we'll talk about Cuck Week here in a minute, but, again, cuckolding used to be a male fantasy that women would indulge. And now it seems like women are kind of taking hold of the reins of this. And wow, that's kind of awesome.
It's the time of women.
Yes. That's why I feel like cuckolding relationships are just like, they're amazing for everyone involved. But for the woman, it's like going through some sort of transformation almost. For a lot of the women, it's like they are given permission to ask for what they want and get what they want and celebrated for that. It's like amazing.
Yeah. I will say that, that there's this interesting thing I keep thinking about, that fears of female infidelity is one of the issues that consistently is a predictor of domestic violence and matrimonial homicide, where a male fears that his wife has cheated on him and then physically harms her or even kills her. As Rose said, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and trained a lot of Brazilians, and one friend of mine was telling me about how common murder suicides are in Brazil when a man finds out his wife has cheated on him. And yet here in cuckolding, we have men that are not responding to this with violence or murder, but joy and excitement. And I think that there really is something unique about that. I'd like to understand more about the differences between these men and the differences with the women who are willing to try this and then love it. That, I think, is the next level that I hope we get to hear about and see.
Yeah. Can we have some research on that? Like, that'd be amazing. Can we have any research on just the women in this kind of relationship in general? Because, like, I feel like I have spoken to so many women along my journey, and we've kind of echoed a lot of the same things. And it would just be really interesting to see if research would, support that or whatever. So I've noticed definitely a lot of trends, even in the 6 years that I have been talking about cuckolding relationships. But there's some really interesting ones. guys seem to be, there's a lot more younger single guys looking for this kind of relationship now. And I think that historically, maybe this was, and still today, primarily mostly married couples that
You're right.
start to incorporate this into their relationship. But now there's a lot of single guys who are looking for this right off the bat with no experience and
Yeah,
young.
you're
Like
yeah,
young.
Venus, I think you hit the nail on the head there that historically, and I talk about in the book that cuckolding was something, consensual cuckolding was something that older men engaged in oftentimes after they had already had children with the wife, where, it was safe to let her have sex with other guys because if she got pregnant from it, it wasn't the end of your marriage or family or whatever. It wasn't this huge risk. But now you're right. I mean, we are seeing these much younger guys coming in and identifying this fantasy and coming into relationships from the front end saying they want this. Now, I wonder if it is some expression of, pornography being such a part of people's development and sexuality that they are, connecting voyeurism and sexuality so powerfully in their relationship that they want their female partner to quote be their own personal porn star. And I say all of that not like I'm saying porn is bad or that is bad. Because in Justin Lehmiller's book, Tell Me What You Want, he finds this remarkable thing where 45% of men are now reporting a sexual fantasy of watching their partner with other men. And roughly the same number of women are reporting a sexual fantasy of being watched. And so it's this amazing match made in heaven if people can connect on these fantasies.
Yes, absolutely. Back in August of this, or last year, I want to say this year, it's 2022 already, but back in August, I launched a private matchmaking service for single men and single women who are looking for a loving cuckolding relationship. And it has been so fascinating because I make them do a 3-week course, but I also get them to do a 1-hour interview, face-to-face interview with me. And I get the chance to get to know all of these single women and single men who are wanting this kind of relationship. It is so intriguing because I thought the two kind of landing spots for women who were single and looking for this was they had a previous relationship like that before, and for whatever reason it ended, and they want it again. And then through the kink door, where this is, part of the kink, their list of kinks that they're into. And yes, that's true that there are women who enter into it from those two places. However, what's really interesting is that there are women who have no experience in it whatsoever, who are now looking for this kind of relationship because they feel like this kind of relationship fits who they are. And I'm just like, oh my God, that's amazing. I think that's really wonderful. So I think that I hope that's the start of a trend where women will consider this as part of a list of kind of non-monogamous relationships that they can have, a viable option anyway. So.
Boy, that sounds fascinating, Venus. I almost want to sit down and talk with you more. I mean, talk about a research project. I mean, if any of those women were interested in, participating in some research about, what led them to cuckolding, that's kind of hot.
Yeah, I honestly, I was so surprised, and I continue to be surprised as they come into the program. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. Okay, so let's talk about Cuck Week. What is Cuck Week? How did this all get started? I feel like I've just been blown over by this wave of Cuck Week stuff going on. Like, what is going on
here? It's Rose's fault. Rose's fault.
You can't help it when you have a good idea. The only problem is do you act on it or not? No, I just, I think that because there's just a lot of misunderstanding about cuckoldry and what hot wifing is and what cuckoldresses are and what bulls are. And my husband feels the same way. And the term Cuck Week actually came from him. He's like, they've got Shark Week. We should do Cuck Week, right? To just help promote the release of the Insatiable Wives, Women Who Stray and the Men Who Love Them audiobook on our KMQ show. But then, we opened our big fat mouths to Dr. Lay over there, and he was just like, yes. Okay. And then things just started happening. Like you said, he's got a fan club and he knows some people.
And yeah, I mean, I reached out to, Mistress K, who's a fan and a wonderful person. I got to go to dinner with her and her husband, and just hear about their relationship and their explorations. And I reached out to her and I said, would it be possible for you to help me connect with other folks in the particularly the online cuckolding community to talk about this idea of a Cuck Week? And she was like, yes. And she made it happen. And then she turned around to me and she's like, wait a minute, is this a good thing? What are we doing here? And I said, the goal of this is to invite people and couples to talk about this dark, secret, shameful thing and the positives that have come out of it, to talk about how it's been a healthy, positive part of their life. And somehow we ended up on the end of January 25th to January 31st is the first annual Cuck Week. And the goal is in that week for people that are, exploring cuckolding, interested in cuckolding, to talk about it and talk about the positives. One of the things that we saw between 2010 and 2015 was that our country experienced the greatest shift in social values in recorded history. In 2010, a majority of the United States believed gay marriage was wrong. In 2015, a majority of our country believed gay marriage was right. That change happened in 5 years because in that period, people came out. They started talking publicly about being gay. We started hearing from our friends, our neighbors, from our favorite television stars and movie stars that they were gay. And, you mentioned Elvira earlier, and Elvira just came out, right, as lesbian. And so that changes things when this sexual thing that we thought was this dark, rare, dirty secret is in the people you know and love. That, I think, is the goal for Cuck Week, is to invite people who have this shameful secret. Man shouldn't ever be cuckolded. If he is, he's a weakling. For those men and women to come out and say, I'm not weak, and this is amazing and positive and healthy for my wife and I, for my partner and I. We're starting it off with a night called Cucktails, and you can all sing in your head the DuckTales song. We're starting it off with Cucktails, where we're having a Zoom session where cuckold couples can sit down and share their stories with sex therapists and therapists that are in training to help those therapists learn not to pathologize the way I did when I first encountered these couples back in 2008. It's amazing that we've come so far. And I think that I will selfishly say that's my goal for Cuck Week, is to let a lot of other people have the experience that I did as I got to hear something I didn't expect about how this works and how it's healthy and positive.
So the way that you intended Cuck Week to be and the way it is blossoming now, Rose, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not freaking out. No. You know what? I have been smiling practically nonstop since we started moving forward with this. And I'm so glad that I was like, okay, I got to create some sort of a hub, because not everybody, is going to be able to catch everything if it's coming from all directions. So if you're on Twitter, it's @Cuck Week, and you can just follow along there. I'm going to share all of the links for all of the things that are going on. And I'll have another little hub space on our Stupid Fish Productions website for things that are not on Twitter as well. So I'm hoping that we can, encourage people who are just curious. Like, what is this thing? Like, from the ground up, what is this thing? And can we play with this? Like, that's the one thing. Like, our podcast we're not sexperts by any means. We just like sex and we want to have fun with it because we think we only live one time. So we're limited in our time that we've got to do this, right? So we just want to encourage people to open their minds and reinvigorate their erotic selves. And I think that Cuck Week is the perfect example of how people have done that. But you're not obligated to live the lifestyle. But understanding it, I think, is what you are obligated to do. You should understand what you're playing with so that you can be more present in it and fulfill yourself more completely. So, this is by no means a prescription. You should be in a cuckolding relationship. Nope. I just want you, if you're curious, to open the door and peek inside and see. You might be surprised by what you'll find. And if it's not for you, it's okay. But there's something there, I think, for everybody.
I would agree. All right. So where can people get the audiobook for Insatiable Wives and where can they learn more about you?
The audiobook Insatiable Wives, Women Who Stray and the Men Who Love Them, written by Dr. David Lay and lovingly narrated by me, Rose Carraway, is available in Audible right now. We are going to run some giveaways, so if you follow at Cuck Week on Twitter, you might get one, or all of the various participants who are, hosting interviews and doing blog posts and live discussions on the Moan app. That's another thing. If you have an iPhone, get the Moan app. I've just created my own profile there, and I'm really excited to listen in on some of the conversations. I know that Venus is on there, so I'm going to be listening to you, girl, okay? Because, you've got some experience.
So fun.
I'm interested in learning more, but get the Moan app if you have an iPhone. Audiobook I think it's in iTunes right now, but just go to Audible. That's the easiest place.
And you can find Rose at Kiss Me Quick and Stupid Fish Productions.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. I just never plug myself. Wait. No, I totally did.
Well, I don't know. We heard a story a little while ago about that. I mean,
I might have. Yes. The Kiss Me Quicks Erotica podcast is on iTunes. And if you just want to talk to your partner about something erotic and you don't have the words or whatever, erotica is a great way to facilitate that. You find a sexy story and go, I like this one. Can we play with that? Go to the Kiss Me Quicks. You'll find something there, I promise.
And I will say I've gotten more comfortable plugging myself over the years. You can find me on Twitter at Dr. David Lay. I always want to say, even though it sounds like getting laid, it's Ley. And then I have a website, davidlayphd.com. But I'm not that difficult to find because a lot of people are talking about these issues, and I'm just really excited to get to be part of it, and to be part of this discussion with amazing people like Rose and you, Venus. That's been the coolest thing for me is, I joked earlier about, 13-year-old me being so excited, but, I was an introverted kind of bookworm kid. So getting able to talk with people like the sexy librarian herself, being part of the conversation around people overcoming sexual shame, is incredibly exciting and fulfilling.
Well, thank you so much to both of you for being on the show today. I must say I absolutely enjoyed all of this discussion and I can't wait for Cuck Week. Thank you so much, Rose, for that one, because I really do think that it's going to be like a real thing every year from now on. So we have you to thank for that.
Cheers.
And thank you, David, for Insatiable Wives. Honestly, it's been an amazing resource for myself and for so many people. And I'm just so grateful for that. So thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you
both.
All right, that's going to be it for this very special episode of the Venus Cuckoldress podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Make sure you go to venuscuckoldress.com. That's where you can subscribe to the podcast. You can ask a question for the show. And of course, there's the Venus Vault. You can also register for Pillow Talk there as well. And don't forget, every Tuesday at 5 and 11 Central Time, you can listen to the Venus Cuckoldress podcast on fullswapradio.com. Also, check out my monthly article in ASN Lifestyle Magazine, and you can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @CuckoldressV. Thanks so much for joining me for this very special episode, and happy Cuck Week to everyone. We'll see you next time. Hi, this is Venus. I have a special message for all of the singles out there. Did you know that there's a new matchmaking service for single women and single men who are looking for a loving, cuckolding relationship? It's not a dating app. There's no swiping through profiles, no messaging other members. It's all done through the matchmaking staff, and it's all behind a privacy wall. You apply for a membership, you fill out a very detailed questionnaire, you work through a 3-week educational course, and then have a 1-hour interview with me. It's a bit of a process, and that's intentional, because then only committed, honest, and serious candidates actually make it through. Then we do the matching for you based on who you are and what you're looking for. It's time for you to find the relationship of your dreams. You can find more information at venusconnections.com.